Welcome back. We are continuing our conversation with Maxime Bernier, the leader and founder of the People's Party of Canada. All right, Maxime, let's go back to that inflation data in the USA. It showed that though CPI did cool down a bit in July, Americans are still paying significantly more for food. The cost of food rose 10.9%, with food in the at-home category rising 13.1%. And it's the same phenomenon in Canada and around the world, people paying more for food. And it looks like food prices are about to get even higher because we do have potentially some big future supply issues with governments now actively imposing restrictions on farmers. In the Netherlands, for example, Dutch farmers are currently protesting the government's plan to impose nitrogen emission limits on fertilizers and animals. The government wants to cut livestock numbers by a third, and they also want to cut nitrate in fertilizer, which would reduce crop yields. Now, Sri Lanka tried similar policies, which did in fact reduce its rice yield substantially, and we're seeing the havoc and chaos there. And now Canada wants to follow a similar path. The Trudeau administration introducing a plan to reduce nitrogen emissions from fertilizer use, very similar to the Dutch government's directives to limit nitrogen pollution. The Trudeau administration planning to reduce fertilizer-related emissions by 30% by 2030, saying that it's a greenhouse gas contributing to climate change. So, Maxime, if this does in fact become law, what would the consequences of this be?
I'm looking at what our farmers are saying here in Canada. And what they are saying, it's, less fertilizer, less food. And if you have less food, the prices will go up. That will be an impact. And you don't need that during that economic crisis that we have right now with that inflation. And actually, we have that in Canada because of the Trudeau government signed the Paris Accord, and they want to fight climate change. But for me and for our political party, the People's Party of Canada is the only party that won't sign the Paris Accord and, won't impose a carbon tax or any other goals to fight climate change. The climate is changing, yes, and I believe that we must not impose more restrictions on people or more taxes. So that may happen. As you just said, the goal for the government is to reduce the emissions coming from farmers by 30%. And so they will have to cut fertilizer and will have less food, and the prices will go up. Look what happened in Europe right now. It's a bad policy and based on the ideology, climate change that I don't share.
Well, look, this policy would force a vast majority of farmers out of business. That's what economists have said regarding the situation in the Netherlands. I'm assuming a very similar situation would happen in Canada. It can only exacerbate food shortages. What is driving the Trudeau administration to take this action? I mean, you've made the point that just like there's been an attack on oil and gas industries, that there's now a similar attack being waged on farmers. And as you said, it's packaged, it's sold in a way to save the planet with this climate change narrative. Do you really think that that is the true push behind this agenda?
I believe so. I believe that the Trudeau government wants to follow the Paris Accord, and they want to do everything. And they believe that the biggest threat to our country and our society is climate change. And that's why they're doing that. But that's effectively not the case. But they are important, and they want also to look good when they are doing some conference in Davos and everywhere, saying, we did our part. But remember, the green gas emissions in Canada are less than 2% of the global green gas emissions on the planet. So Canada won't save the world, but it's a philosophy. It's that philosophy, that socialism. And we will fight that. But and also it's the same thing with the Conservative Party of Canada. They agreed with the the Paris Accord. They will fight climate change. They won't impose a carbon tax, but they will impose more regulation on businesses. And when you do that, prices is going up. So I believe that it's a it's not the right time to do that. There's never a right time to do it for me. And now, that will just accelerate the inflation and the prices on food in Canada and in other countries that will follow that policy.
Well, there's also concern that this causes social instability similar to what we've seen in Sri Lanka around the world. I mean, so many of the world's revolutions throughout history have been sparked by a food supply crisis or shortage. One can debate whether the science on climate change is as many say it is, or whether your party's position on it is more accurate. But you can't really debate the fact that if this is implemented in this extreme sense, that it's going to ultimately hurt the majority of the developing world. How is that not being factored into the conversation here?
We must ask that question to these establishment politicians that are cheerleaders of that kind of policies. For me, the impact is real. The impact is there, not only in Canada, but also that would be an impact in other countries, poor countries. And, Canada, we are sending money to countries in Africa to fight climate change. I will stop that. I don't believe that money is going to fight climate change when you're giving money to dictatorship in Africa. But it's a big concern for the Trudeau government. So what they're saying, they won't help, like you just said, poor countries. That will be difficult for them. I don't understand why they're so precise and they want to follow all these crazy policies. It's hurting not only us, but it will hurt a lot of people on this planet. So, I'm a politician that are promoting common sense policies, and for me, it's not a common sense policy.
Well, you're also a politician that is a very big promoter and advocate of personal responsibility, of taking ownership of your own actions. But we're seeing the antithesis play out on the global world stage. There's an increasing pull towards bigger government and socialist ideologies and depending on handouts and asking for more government intervention and a bigger sense of entitlement. And it's not just in Canada, in the US, but this phenomenon is expanding around the globe. Why do you think that is?
First, I must say that you're right. It's very popular. We are living in a socialist era now, not only in Canada, but in Europe and in the US. So when I'm speaking about individual freedom and personal responsibility, it is not popular to speak about that right now. But, it's not because something is popular that something is just and true. And for us, the more we speak about what we believe, the more support we will have. And that's why I'm saying that we are doing politics differently, the People's Party, because we are doing politics by conviction. So, right. Yes.
But why do you think this phenomenon is growing in popularity? From a, psychological, sociological point of view, why do you think we're seeing this big pull to the left?
But I believe that people don't understand right now there's nothing as a free lunch. They don't, all that spending for COVID-19, when these governments said, yeah, we will shut down the economy, you'll stay at home, we'll give you your money. We have more and more people that are dependent on the government for all these programs. So they're used to that. And you must fight that. I want people to be independent. I want people to have more of their own money in their pockets. With the taxation system in Canada, when you have 50% of your salary and that you're paying in taxes with the income tax, provincial tax, GST, it's a lot of taxes. And so people have less of their own money in their own pockets. They're looking for the government to save them. But I'm saying, the government won't not save anybody. The government is the problem. The central bankers are the problem. And that's why we are arguing and promoting a smaller government that will give more money to people, more of their own money in their own pockets, and they will be able to do what they want with their money.
Yeah, Jim Rogers, who's a regular on Kitco News, likes to say that the biggest lesson of history is that people don't learn the lessons of history. And I guess that's why we're seeing this phenomenon play out again with this push towards socialism that people just haven't seen how this has worked out in the past, and not very favorably. I want to focus now a little bit on when you were Foreign Minister of Canada and get you to weigh in on some of the big developments happening on the global stage. In my interview with Willem Middelkoop, he hinted that there could be a kinetic war between China and Taiwan. He said we're already in a form of World War III, but it's being played out in the financial stage. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, just visited Taiwan. That intensified tensions between China and the US, although China is now saying that it's going to call off military drills in the seas and airspace around Taiwan. How do you see this playing out with regards to China and Taiwan? Do you think that some kind of military action there is on the horizon?
I hope not. I understand that, China has eyes on Taiwan, but my preference is the statu quo. I want Taiwan to be neutral. But if something happened, if there's a war there, what would be the position of our country, of Canada? I'm looking at our Canadian forces. They're not well equipped. You said I was Foreign Affairs Minister, yes. And in 2008, when we did that war in Afghanistan, I was traveling across the world and in Europe for asking for help. Our Canadian forces didn't have the right equipment at that time and didn't have the right equipment. And I was a little bit successful to have some help from France, from Germany, from other countries in Afghanistan for us. But first of all, we must rebuild in Canada our Canadian forces. So let's look what will happen. But, it's something in the next couple of years can happen in Taiwan. I hope that they will stay neutral, but we don't know.
So you are a proponent of bigger military spending in Canada. You would like to see a more formidable Canadian military force, and you'd like to boost spending in the defense sector.
Absolutely. It's a part of our platform. I said at the last campaign, we must spend 2% of the GDP in our Canadian forces. That's a commitment, our NATO commitment, and we're not there. We're less than 1%, I believe. But also, we don't have the money. First of all, we must balance the budget. And after that, we'll look to reinvest money, for our Canadian forces. Absolutely. But it can happen in one mandate. I think it will take more times than that. But we must have a strong commitment to achieve that goal that we said to our NATO's partners, that we will spend 2% of the GDP for our Canadian forces.
If there is a scenario, Maxime, where China is emboldened to take action and does engage in some kind of military action in Taiwan, how do you think NATO should respond if there is a so-called hot war?
Yeah, that's the question, Michelle. And, it will be a huge debate between the NATO members. I really don't know. I don't want to think about that now. I'm not there, and we'll see. I hope it won't happen, but you never know.
Well, there is another war that unfortunately is happening, and many have said that invasion of Ukraine by President Putin of Russia was precipitated by a signal of weakness from the United States and a lack of appetite to engage in conflict. And that you mentioned the war in Afghanistan, that the way that the US withdrew its forces from Afghanistan in the debacle that was and in the chaos that ensued, that perhaps emboldened President Putin to take action by invading Ukraine. What are your thoughts on that? But
first, you must know that we are the only political party in Canada that is against that war in Ukraine. It's not our war. Our country is broke. We don't have money. And actually, I'm not pro-Putin. I'm not pro-Russia. And I'm looking at that. And, Putin said before the invasion, he said that he doesn't want a NATO base in Ukraine. and we, the West, we were pushing Ukraine to be part of NATO, I think it's a big mistake. Look what happened in 1962 when Kennedy was president. At that time, we had the missile crisis in Cuba, and Kennedy said, "I don't want Soviet missiles at my doors." And they had an agreement. So, but it's a little bit the same thing over there. So it's not our war, and we must not be trying to escalating always that. And that's the case right now. Sending arms over there. I don't know if the ammunition and the arms that we are sending to Ukraine is staying there. Is it going in other places, other countries? We don't know. So it's not our war. We don't have anything to do there. But here in Canada, it's very popular to be pro-Ukraine because we have 1 million Canadian citizens coming from Ukraine, and they are using the foreign policy to buy votes in Canada. That's why the Conservative Party of Canada, the Liberals, the NDP, they're all pro-Ukraine and pro-war. And I believe that the role of our country must be to promote peace and trying to find a diplomatic solution. I think Canada may have a role to play there.
Well, to your point, it has been argued that the US and the West may have provoked Russia by contravening several agreements made since the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The argument has been made that NATO has expanded well beyond its original mandate, thus poking the bear, if you will. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, NATO has added 14 member states, including countries like Latvia and Estonia, which border Russia, that this has been in violation of previous agreements, and that Putin made it very, very clear in 2008 that Ukraine joining NATO was the reddest of red lines not to be crossed. And then in November last year, the Biden administration officially recognized Ukraine's desire to join NATO. Now, to be clear, certainly not condoning Putin's actions, certainly not defending them. But now that we do have this conflict, which is almost 6 months running, how do you see it playing out? Do you think that there is some kind of diplomatic off-ramp?
I believe so. I believe so that, I believe that Ukraine will have to concede some territories, and we will have also to be sure to say to Putin and Russia that Ukraine won't be part of NATO. So I think there's a solution for a diplomatic ending of that conflict. We need to put these two parties at the table, and I believe that it can happen, and I hope it will happen.
Okay, well, let's change gears and talk about a very different kind of conflict. And that's your recent Twitter tiff with Robert Matheson, the president of the Conservative Party. Now, you were calling him out for pandering to the woke crowd by adding pronouns to his bio. He then accused you of being against free speech. And then you replied that the Conservative Party of Canada's woke president thinks I'm against free speech because I'm pointing out his ridiculous use of pronouns in his bio. When are you officially merging with the Liberals? All right, let's not debate the idea of declaring pronouns per se. We will leave that one aside for now, because my question to you is bigger. Why do you think the woke culture has been so prevalent and so effective in infiltrating people and groups, in having such a big influence that even the Conservative Party of Canada is catering to it, even if it is on many levels against their beliefs and values?
Because it's trendy to be woke. Wokeism started in universities 13 years ago. Now it's everywhere, journalism, in politics, at school, everywhere. And they believe that the Conservative Party of Canada believe that they can have more support. That's why I'm saying, the Conservative is not conservative. They try to please the media. They try to please the LGBTQ community and all that, trying to have their vote. But common sense must prevail. And I don't want any, the president of the Conservative Party of Canada is free to tweet what he wants, and I'm not against that. He can, he's free to freedom of speech. I believe in that. But I have the right also to put him and telling him that what he's doing, it's ridiculous. It's my freedom of speech also.
But my question is, why do you think it's so popular? Because the argument has been made that it really isn't that popular, that it's the loudest voices in the room that get the most attention. But if you actually speak to people, many of them are against it, but are succumbing to this peer pressure by the loudest voices, by the mainstream media, by some big corporations that are trying to meet ESG standards on governance and sustainability and comply, but that the majority of the people do not necessarily share this, but are being, I guess, infiltrated by the ideology. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the media, the mainstream media, has a big role to play there. And that's why these big corporations, they want to have a good press, and they're pushing that. So they just, the press is there, and they're woke, and we don't have journalists anymore. We have radical leftists as journalists, mostly in Canada in the big mainstream media. So I believe that these big corporations are acting like that because they want to have good press. But I agree with you on that. The general population, I don't think that that's huge for them. I think that they're not looking at that debate. But it's a kind of a cultural war that we have here right now, wokeism. And when you are teaching our kids at school that you may not be a little boy if you feel that you're a little girl. So and there's two sex for me. That's based on science. And all that socialism, wokeism, and cancel culture, that's what, if you're a white man in Canada, you must be privileged and you must feel guilty for racism. And, I said that there's no systemic racism in Canada. We have one legislation in Canada, that is the Indian Act. It is based on race. That's racist. We must eliminate that. We must repeal that act. But it's all about, it's trendy. They want to be part of the new trend. But for me, I may agree with you. The big majority of the population are saying, it's not important, and they're not looking at it. But we must wake up a little bit. That's because we have policies that are promoting not competence or character, but promoting diversity. That diversity, inclusion, and equality die. It's a philosophy that it's against Western civilizations, and I'm fighting against that for sure.
All right, so wake up to the woke culture infiltrating everything. All right, Maxime, when you have made similar comments like this in the past, you have been called a bigot, a racist, anti-LGBTQ. So why don't you set the record straight and clarify what your positions are?
Yes, I just want to tell you that my policy advisor, my good friend, and the co-founder of the party with me is a gay guy. So I'm not anti-gay, but I want common sense in politics. And for people who said that I was a racist, they said that because our policy on immigration, we are against mass immigration in Canada. When you have 450,000 people, newcomers every year, with a population of 38 million people, that's mass immigration. And the majority of these people are refugees and people coming under reunification of family. Only 25% of them are economic immigrants or skilled immigrants that we need because an entrepreneur in Canada was not able to find a Canadian for that job. So that being said, our policy on immigration is sustainable immigration and fewer immigrants, but more economic or skilled immigrants. So my political opponents, because I'm speaking about that, they try to paint me and they were telling that I'm a racist, and actually Trudeau is using that word every time that is against his opponent. That was the same thing for the truckers in Ottawa. They were supposed to be a bunch of racists and xenophobe because they were there to protest and celebrating freedoms. So I will continue to fight for what I believe, and I know who I am. I'm a Canadian, a proud Canadian, a father, And I believe in people, and that's why at the People's Party, we have faith in you. We have faith that we have faith that you have the ability, the dignity, and the right to make your own decisions and determine your own destiny. We believe in people. We don't believe in a big fat government. And, you can be gay, you can be black or white. For me, I will look at you as a Canadian, and I will judge you in line with your character and your competence, not the color of your skin. For me, it's not important. I like what Martin Luther King Jr. said. We must look at people based on their character and not the color of their skin. And that's what we are doing, and that's what I'm doing as a politician.
Well, as a politician and the leader of the PPC, your party has contested 2 elections since being founded in 2018. Now, so far, you've picked up no seats. You've come close, but you've picked up no seats, although your share of the vote has increased to about 5% of the voters, I believe. Are you reasonably confident that you'll make significant gains in the next election?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look at the history in Canada. The Green Party of Canada, after 35 years, they had 2% and we had 5% of the vote. And it took the Green Party of Canada 15 years to have more than 1.6% of the vote. We did that in our first election, in our first year in 2019. We had 1.6% of the vote. Now we had 840,000 people that voted for us. And remember, I was not able to participate in the national debates during the last campaign. Mainstream media and my opponents didn't want me on the stage, and they said, oh, there's a new rule for a new political party in Canada to participate in the national debates. You need to have 4% of the vote. We had 5%. So at the next election, I'll be part of this debate. It will be easier to promote our policy. And I'm doing that right now. I'm traveling across the country, building the party, finding candidates, being ready for a next election, because as you know, in Canada, we have a minority government and we can have an election anytime. But yes, answering your question, this party will be ready. And I believe at the next election, we'll have a freedom voice in Parliament in Ottawa.
All right. And then you have to come back on Kitco News and share your thoughts with us again. Maxime, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate that, Michelle. Thank you very much for given me that opportunity.
And thank you for watching Kitco News. I'm Michelle Makori. Keep it right here for more.